Video game music has always been a big part of the hobby of gaming for me. There are some games with soundtracks so memorable, I simply would not have had the same experience with the game without its incredible music backing up the gameplay. Following in the steps of my Sega Genesis music episodes, I'm here with some of my favorite tunes from the Sega Saturn. One could assume that the move to CD-based Red Book audio would strip much of the uniqueness away from the music of this era. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the Sega Saturn alone has some of my favorite music from any era. I hope you guys enjoy the Sega Saturn music episode. Astal represented my first look at traditional gameplay on the Saturn. While critics love to point out it was just a platformer that did nothing really new, this wasn't my view at all. It took a genre I had known well for many years, gave it an art style and aesthetic that simply blew everything else away at the time, and then paired it with an unforgettable soundtrack. This game has more style in a single level than most 32-bit games had in their entirety. Sega's fighting games have always been among some of my favorites. One thing that is often glossed over when these games come up is the absolutely legendary music that many of them had. I use it in my videos often, and for damn good reason. One of the first shoot 'em ups I had for my Saturn, Layer Section was a bona fide badass of a game. Its great visuals and gameplay also happened to be backed up by a pretty good selection of music. It'll take you on a roller coaster ride of emotions, and that's what a good soundtrack is supposed to do. Among the racing hierarchy on the Sega Saturn, Grand Chaser doesn't rate so very high. Although it predates Wipeout by nearly half a year, it was quickly passed by that game in popularity and forgotten. When it was brought west by Sega, they would strip the fantastic Japanese music away and replace almost all of it. If you ever get a chance to pick up the Japanese original, it's worth the price of admission just for the music alone. Say what you want about Hang On GP 95, but when it comes to its music, it definitely was worth listening to. So good was some of this stuff that I actually played the game a lot more than I otherwise would have just to hear that music. When that happens, you know you're in the presence of something great. The games that Sega made themselves rarely disappointed when it came to music, but Nights was something special even among these titans. Many of the tracks in Nights captured that feeling of surreal wonder that the game has, often carrying with it an emotion of happiness and discovery. It was the kind of sound that you could hum along to long after it had stopped, and it's still something I can listen to today. You really can't have a Sega Saturn music episode and not mention the console's Japanese defender, Segata Sanshiro. Kicking ass and taking names, he sought out Sega Saturn owners to make sure they understood how important it was to play their beloved system. He appeared in many commercials, even getting his own game on the system towards the end of its life.
魂込めた一人の男が今日も行く真面目に遊ばぬ奴らには体で覚えさせるぞセガタ三四郎セガタ三四郎セガサタンシロテニスやカラオケナンパにクラブ放火にすることあるだろうが群れなきゃ遊べぬやつらには心に問いかけるぞセガタ三四郎セガタ三四郎セガサタンシロ
The Thunder Force games all had some pretty memorable music, and Part 5 on the Saturn was no exception. Much of the music was loud and fast, driving the hectic gameplay every step of the way. If you like the stuff in previous Thunder Force games, you'll likely like this as well. I am typically not a fan of jazz or jazz-inspired music. The sound and instruments just don't appeal to me. Even with that said, I enjoyed much of the stuff in Guardian Heroes. Some of it was happy and energetic, some of it dark and ominous, and some of it just kicked ass. Panzer Dragoon is one of my favorite games of all time. I love the visuals, the gameplay, and yes, its incredible music as well. In my opinion, it has no less than 4 of the very best musical selections our hobby has ever seen. These tracks are powerful, emotional freight trains that will leave you a different person after having experienced them. There are many video games out there that get music right, and then there are games like Panzer Dragoon. Enjoy. Video game music continued to be a powerful part of gaming for me well into this generation of consoles. What you have heard here is but a small drop in the bucket of the great music it had to offer, and I'd love to share more of it in the future with you. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for listening, and I will catch you next time.